It's being reported that the Treasury is looking to raise more money from inheritance tax. This comes as pressure on the country's finances grows ahead of the autumn budget, with a gap between revenue and spending estimated to reach more than £40 billion. Now, sources say that the government is considering the possibility of a cap on lifetime gifting. So how it works at the moment is that gifts made 7 years before someone dies are not subject to inheritance tax. So if introduced, the cap would limit the amount of money or value of assets someone could donate as part of their inheritance planning. Now, no decisions have been made yet, but how it works is if you don't want the tax man to get what you're going to give to your kids, get their hands on it, you can say, look, kids or people you love, here it is. As if I live 7 years, then the government have no right to it. Anne, is this yet another raid on people who've worked hard all of their lives?
Yes, it is. And when you consider particularly the value of houses, you know, people can have bought quite a modest house, often with quite a bit of struggle. And then, of course, the house goes up and up and up in value, and the Treasury says, "Oh, thank you. We'll have a large proportion." And what I hate about this is, you know, that people are taxed when they earn money. They're taxed on the interest if they then save part of it. And now, if they want to give it away to their children and help their children, they're going to be taxed on that as well. No, I think this is wholly wrong.
The thing is, Zach, we're not talking about billionaires, right? Or in many cases, millionaires. It's the one asset that a family has. Often they live in working class areas of London, may have bought their house, and they find that they've got a value of an asset, that's worth substantial value. Why should they not be able to pass that on to their kids?
Because it's the principle of it. We need to tax wealth and not work. We tax far too often earned income more than we tax unearned wealth. So if Anne is outraged for people's children, we should be outraged that actually children are growing up in such an unequal society where we're struggling to fund public services and people are worried about their futures, and actually moving money out of assets and getting into the general stream is actually a really positive and important thing to do.
It really isn't only the middle classes and the wealthy who use public services. Sorry, it isn't only the poor who use public services.
Well, you're making my point for me.
We all use public services, so it isn't unequal at all. And the idea that you penalise people several times on the same money is just wrong.
But we hear over and over again about public services that Keir Starmer needs to make tricky decisions. But why are these never tricky decisions for multimillionaires or billionaires, or indeed people with assets? Why are these always tricky decisions for the poorest people, for people on benefits, for disabled people?
The reason that Keir Starmer is having to make tricky decisions is very straightforward. He's made people worse off. And he's now faced with a choice of making them even worse off than that, or somehow trying to stimulate growth, which he's cut off by the national insurance rise.
You don't stimulate growth by keeping money in assets. You stimulate growth by moving money around the economy.
You stimulate growth by letting people keep their own money and spend it.
That's the
At
thing.
the moment, people can't spend it.
You know, I wonder about that, Zach. You know, it's not just a Thatcherite sort of view, but the problem, as she said, is that sometimes when the government is in power, especially a left-wing government, they never get tired of spending other people's money. And this is a worry that people have at home. You know, it's one thing to say millionaires, multimillionaires and billionaires should pay their fair dues, but these are sort of ordinary people. One of the points that a lot of our viewers make is, look, you've got to keep people that generate the wealth in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
More of this, and they're going to head off. And all of the things that you care about simply won't be paid for because it's an open global market and they can go elsewhere.
Well, like so many issues, Thatcher was talking absolute nonsense because it's not other people's money, it's Bank of England money. And actually anything we can do, we can afford. And we know that investing in our public services creates something called spending multipliers. For every pound we spend, that is creating more money that's going around our economy. The way to destroy the economy is exactly what we're talking about here, which is to store money in assets, making the inequality gap even wider. Poor people getting poorer, rich people getting richer, and problems within society, our social structures are completely falling down.
Why are people leaving the country? Big entrepreneurs, etc. You want to bring that wealth of ideas.
I don't believe they are leaving the country, and actually they can't move their assets. And we're talking right here about assets. Assets don't move. The Duke of Westminster owns half of Mayfair. He's not going to just move Mayfair.
Anne?
Yeah, well, I was actually going to make a point earlier, so we've slightly gone off it. Just to say this to you, when people cannot spend, They cannot buy goods and services. The people who provide those goods and services have to cut back. That means unemployment. That means even more people depending on the public purse. What you want is people to have more of their own money, indeed as much of their own money as it is possible to do. And that then creates spending through the economy. Now, any student of economics will tell you
that makes no
that
sense,
if people can't spend, you actually start to damage the
We're
economy.
talking about assets. If they're hoarding in assets, they're not spending it.
Well, very quick one is that, let's just talk very quickly before we move on to a story I think you've got about the water companies. I'm wondering about the politics of this. For Labour to win, as they did at the last election, albeit with a low national share, a lot of it antipathy towards the Tory government, to say the least, and your party, the Green Party, did very well. Here's a question that I think a lot of people have. What about the politics of this, where this is likely to affect the biggest group of voters, middle-class people, who simply found themselves, as Anne was describing before, owning an asset through hard work and saving and diligence, and kind of want to keep it?
I think this is what's missing in politics, which is essentially the importance of storytelling and not going just where people are of the easy answers, but actually politicians spending their time talking about why these decisions need to be made and why these things are important. And as I said at the very beginning, we often hear about this so-called burden on working people. And it is true that some people who are working really, really hard, talking about nurses, cleaners, caterers, people who are working every single day with their hands and with their brains, are being taxed more than someone who might have done nothing but just happens to own an asset. That is
a Green
unfair.
Party view that, as far as you're concerned, this big group of middle-class people that might have a house, not just middle-class people, some of them are nurses, all the people you described, that, as far as you're concerned, if you've got that money, that value in an asset, you shouldn't be able to pass it on to your children. That should go into the public pot and be used for public services.
Well, that's a question about taxation reform.
No, it's a direct question.
No, and I largely agree, but things like bringing capital gains tax in line with income tax, right now, a whole kind of tax system is weighed unfairly so that it's hitting poorer people hardest. What I'm really suggesting is that those with the broadest shoulders need to carry the biggest
You've
load.
got to give it to him, Anne. That is an ideological point of view. It's a very clear, you might say, red water between the Green Party, who are the party of the left now, and the Labour Party.
And if you look at countries who have practiced communism, which is pretty well all what that is, if you look at countries which have practiced trying to level, not opportunity, but trying to level actual holding of wealth, they haven't really done so well.
Well, I think that's untrue. If you look at somewhere like Switzerland, that has a wealth tax, and actually they seem to be doing pretty well. There's lots of other countries around the world that have looked at wealth taxes. And fundamentally, I think most people agree that when people are really, really struggling, those with inordinate amounts of wealth, I'm not talking about small shop owners, I'm not talking about small business holders.
But you are when it comes to inheritance tax. You are when it comes to inheritance tax.
Than any of us could earn in a
You are talking about those people.